This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchil. We've been talking about millennials who are political leaders. In studio with me is Mayor Ben Florsheim of Middletown, Connecticut. And joining me now by phone is Representative Stephanie Cummings. She serves Waterbury's East End and East Mountain neighborhoods in the Connecticut General Assembly. Representative Cummings, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So we were talking with national correspondent of Time, Charlotte Ayer, about her book looking into why there are individuals in the millennial generation who are stepping up and getting into politics. So what got you involved, Representative Cummings?
I actually completely fell into politics when I was in college. I was taking First Amendment classes at Sacred Heart University with Dr. Gary Rose, and I just found the topic and the material so interesting. So I started volunteering on a campaign as part of my senior project, and then I interned at the House for the seat I actually hold now.
And so you are a millennial that's in the Republican Party in Connecticut. So when you think about who your colleagues are in the General Assembly, are there a lot of millennial lawmakers?
There are. I'm actually the youngest female lawmaker that is currently in the Connecticut General Assembly, but there are plenty of my colleagues like Jesse McLaughlin, who's another young Republican who's proud to represent the state of Connecticut.
Something we talked about with Charlotte is that when we think about the millennial generation, that they skew left, and with someone as polarizing as President Trump, you don't see a lot of young Republicans that are supporting him and his policies. How do you see the national conversation about what's happening in Washington with the divisiveness impacting the Republican Party here in Connecticut, if at all?
Well, I think that the divisiveness that's happening down in D.C., of course, has an impact here in Connecticut, but I think that Connecticut Republicans, we are our own entity. We are bipartisan. We work together. We're the only caucus in the building that has a female leader. So I think that we really stand on our own in identifying who we are and the values that we represent here in Connecticut.
So when you're thinking about issues that you want to address for your constituency in Waterbury, but also thinking about your young constituents, what are some of the issues that you want to tackle as a state representative?
So I represent Waterbury's East End and East Mountain, and I'm actually probably the most urban Republican in the delegation. But we work really closely across the bipartisan aisle. So as a freshman, I was very concerned about public safety in my district. And I went through the budget and found a way that I could bring $300,000 back to the district per year to be able to fund anti-gang initiatives. And my colleagues from the entire Waterbury delegation joined in, and it was a bipartisan effort to help better Waterbury.
We are hearing from someone on Facebook. James writes that he's a millennial, 26, on the Cromwell Town Council. He goes on to say it's vitally important that our generation makes up the majority of the workforce, that we have our voices heard for what we want the future of our state to look like. We want a sustainable Connecticut that's built for the next century and will keep our young people from moving away. So, Representative Cummings, is that something that you are also looking to address?
Of course. I mean, making sure that my generation has a place to stay and it is affordable to be able to have a family, that the education is something that the parents of these young children are going to want to engage in. Of course, that's important to me. I mean, for example, right after this interview, I'm going downstairs to talk with the Waterbury Rail Caucus about making improvements to the rail line so that the Waterbury area can benefit the same way that the New Haven and Stamford area have, to make it easier for our young professionals to be able to move throughout the state in a sustainable manner.
And that's definitely an important issue for residents, including young Connecticut residents. When I want to go back to Mayor Florsheim, hearing what Representative Cummings is saying about issues that resonate with her and her constituency. I mentioned, again, the narrative about people moving away from the state. So what are some ways to engage the population to think about how to keep young people here, but not keeping it all negative?
I do think that we need to. I think sustainability is a really great way to frame it. And I heard, I think my friend Councilman James Demetriadis touch on that via Facebook. I think that infrastructure is tremendously important, and really the way to think about this is, we don't have to think about it necessarily everything as a generational issue. We can think about what are the essential challenges that we face as a state And through that lens, you can see how it will benefit young people and encourage them to either stay here or come here from elsewhere. Infrastructure is incredibly important. Representative Cummings mentioned the Waterbury branch line, which I'm very familiar with from my time in Senator Murphy's office. One of his top priorities is working with the state, working with the Waterbury delegation and the Valley delegation to bring that line, to bring more service to that line, and thinking about public transportation infrastructure, whether that is Metro North or bus infrastructure, pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, that sort of thing. These are things that we know that we need, and we've needed them for a long time. They're also the things that we know that are important to young people and important to people who are thinking about what is going to be what are my priorities in terms of a place that I'm looking to live. We also know we need to address cost of living. That is the defining element of this generation in a lot of ways, is that we're facing extraordinarily high cost of living on one end. Many people, as you mentioned earlier, saddled with student debt and other expenses on the other end. And what are we doing about that in Connecticut? How are we thinking about our economy? How are we thinking about the structure of our state and local government to make it a more affordable, more sustainable, long-term place to live? I think that these are the issues that everybody is thinking about in our state, but they are also the ones that are going to be the lens through which millennials and younger people look at when they're thinking about their future here.
You're hearing Ben Florsheim, again, mayor of Middletown, Connecticut. On the phone with me is State Representative Stephanie Cummings, who serves Waterbury's East End and East Mountain neighborhoods in the Connecticut General Assembly. We're talking with them both as we look at leaders and from the millennial generation who have stepped up and are serving in office. You can join us, too, at 888-720-9677 or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Stephanie, Representative Cummings, you mentioned, we heard Mayor Florsheim mentioning student debt. Is this something that you're also hearing from your constituency, and you're interested in helping people not only figure out how to navigate that, but getting training opportunities for new careers?
Absolutely. I mean, speaking from personal experience, I have law school debt. I had to put myself through law school. I'm the first member of my family to have gone through college and a professional degree. So it is definitely something that I am concerned about. And one of the ways that I'm looking to address this is by being on the Commerce Committee, where I sit as the ranking member, encouraging the manufacturing and the trades to start talking to our students younger, because it seems that for so long we've pushed everybody into getting a college degree when not everyone needs to have a college degree. So we need to highlight the manufacturing and the trade opportunities that we do have in Connecticut. And that's what Waterbury has been long known for our manufacturing opportunities. When we're shoving everybody into getting a traditional 4-year collegiate degree, we're ignoring the opportunity for someone to get a really good career with no student debt. So I think there's the issue of dealing with the current student debt that people have taken on, but also how do we fix that problem going forward?
Representative Cummings, you mentioned earlier that you kind of fell into politics. You had a professor that piqued your interest while you were in college. Do you see a lot of young people that are looking up to you, seeing you as someone who can be a mentor and to have them also be engaged in politics?
I sure hope so. I try to reach out to the younger generation as much as I can. I actually just recently visited Crosby High School, which is in my district, and worked with a great group of dynamic students to talk about the issues that are important to them. And we talked about a bill that would take some of the tobacco settlement monies and bring it back to the districts to be able to promote anti-drug and anti-smoking initiatives. That was really important to them. And we're going to have a public hearing and bring them up to Hartford to engage in the process. So I hope that they learn. They're not old enough to vote at this point, but their voice still matters, and I want them to understand the process. I want them to know who their representative is and how they can engage in the dialogue that's going to impact them here in Hartford.
How do you see the way you are interacting with your constituents that might be different from, say, some of your older colleagues at the General Assembly, Representative Cummings?
Well, the way that I interact with my district is I make sure to get out there as much as I possibly can. I visit all of the community clubs. I visit the high schools. I go into the younger elementary schools. I talk about what it's like to be a lawyer, what it's like to be a state representative. So I try to make sure that I'm having as much one-on-one contact and talking to all of the generations in the area in which I live and represent.
I want to go back to Mayor Ben Florsheim again, who leads the city of Middletown, Connecticut. Talk a little bit about some of the politicians that you're working with, maybe in a bipartisan manner, as you're thinking about, again, how to address Connecticut's issues, and especially in Middletown, Connecticut.
Well, I'm very lucky right now in that our city council, we have a 12-member city council that members are all elected citywide at large, and it really doesn't feel in this, which is, it's astonishing to even say this in the climate that we're living in at the national level. But right now, it doesn't even feel like we have partisan friction at all in Middletown, which is really pretty remarkable. We have a majority leader on our council, Councilman Gene Nocera, and a minority leader, Councilman Phil Pacina on the Republican side, who have known each other for decades. And, they're of a totally different generation than I am. But I'm gratified that I have been able to, and that they have been willing to work very collaboratively with me, and that they are also working very collaboratively together. And the tone that we tried to strike during our campaign, we ran a progressive issues-oriented campaign, and we weren't going to back down on that. But we also wanted to emphasize the importance of working together on these local issues. And I like to think that to some extent we've been able to carry that tone over into city government at least in these first few months, and I think that that's going to persist for a while. We have, as I mentioned before, we have young elected officials in Middletown. We have elected officials in Middletown who have been in office for longer than I've been alive, and we're reaching a point right now, at least for the time being, where we're able to focus. We have a lot of specific things that we have to tackle. We have a riverfront that we're working on redeveloping. We have a Main Street that is thriving, a downtown district that is thriving, but we need to make sure that we have our eye on the ball so we can keep it moving in the right direction. When you have those specific targets that you need to hit, then it's easier to get everybody working on the same page.
Well, we're running out of time, but Representative Cummings, before we let you go, for millennials who are listening, again, the drumbeat is often negative of why you want to stick around in Connecticut. Why did you decide to stay? And in under 30 seconds.
Because it's a great place, and my family's here. There's so much opportunity, and if we have to be the example. You could be the example and make a change in your community to make it the kind of place that you can promote to everyone else as being such a wonderful environment to grow up and to live in.
I want to thank State Representative Stephanie Cummings, again, who serves Waterbury's East End and East Mountain neighborhoods in the General Assembly. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Also, Mayor Ben Florsheim, hope to have you back as well.
Great to be here. Thanks.
I'm Lucy Nalpathanchil. Today's show produced by Carmen Baskoff.